Leviticus 23 tells us, this great being speaking, "These are my feasts, to be kept forever in all of your generations." So let's take a look, see what God laid down as the law for those who believe in God and want to obey God, and who want to keep these days that He gave us to our ancestors right back then to be kept forever in all of our generations. The first of these was the Passover celebration or remembrance, one time a year, on one day of the year, to be held, a solemn feast, a solemn celebration, not to be repeated after that until the 12-month period had elapsed, not to be celebrated with the bread and the wine in our churches on a Sunday morning or any other day of the week, but once a year. And it is actually a disgrace to repeat that celebration more than what is laid down there in actually what is the law. Then comes the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which was held in the spring, in the beginning of God's year. God did not begin His year in the middle of winter. That is a completely Roman pagan celebration. It was founded before the Roman calendar, actually, but featured in there. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is our recognition to God that we intend to live by His laws and to overcome our human nature during the 7-day period, which symbolizes our intention for the coming year. Then we count 50 to the time when God actually gives His mind power, His understanding to we fickle humans, and that came to the one true church that Christ founded. There weren't many. He did not find many, and there weren't many involved, but he gave His mind power that would help us overcome to the one true church that still exists in this world today, a very small body who carry the truth, also remembers the first fruits, the first harvest, of course, after Pentecost, which is the third feast during the year. Then later on, nearing the fall, comes what is known as trumpets, the blowing of a trumpet. Christ will return to earth at the sound of a great trumpet sound blowing around the world. He does not come secretly. This is not going to be for a few to be taken off to heaven and the rest of us are totally wiped out on this planet. And this planet does not lose its existence or its population to the point where there is total extinction and the few wing their way to heaven. That is just not true. Then comes the Feast of Atonement, the one day when we are at one with God, where we humble ourselves after the return of Jesus Christ. This world is humbled. Then comes tabernacles, known as booths or temporary dwellings, which celebrates the 1,000 years that God has reserved for Himself to rule this entire earth, the entire world population, in what is known as the kingdom of God established on this earth. Jesus Christ said He was to be a king and He will rule this earth as He prophesied. The last feast of the year. It is the time when everyone who ever lived is resurrected, and God the Father actually comes to dwell on this earth with us. These last 4 feasts are held in the fall of the year, and that's the end of God's feast for the year. They begin again in the spring when new life comes back and the lambs skip in the fields with the bumper crops and the prosperity that God has given our nations. The British American people, Canadians, those of the empire, are just like the original Israelites who made a deal with God that if He would bless them, give them everything that they needed, the British Empire and the United States of America, that they would obey His laws. And unfortunately, we have been tricked out of that by a great false church understanding any of this, including doing away with His Sabbath day and His holy days. And so our time is up, virtually. We have had our 6,000 years, and all kinds of false religions have been allowed to be preached, and their time is up. With Christ's return, these great churches who assumed every pagan custom and rolled it up into what is known as false Christianity. It says that the entire world and the entire Christian world would be deceived, and we are deceived. And we're keeping the Roman calendar, we're keeping all of the celebrations in the Roman calendar, and we are not keeping God's calendar. And so we will have to go back to that. And those who want to go back to that now can do that now. You can go to American Britain's Future and click in the reference section where it gives the dates of each of these holy days for the next several years. Go to page 2 and read God's Holy Days. And on page 6, there's an entire library page there devoted to explaining each of these. Begin now keeping these days and keeping God's Sabbath day, which is a sign between you and God that you are willing to obey His laws, to keep His Sabbaths, to keep His annual feast days, and to be protected from World War III that is soon to come upon us.